This is HB Vibes, your home for shocking and emotional war stories. Hit like, smash that subscribe, and let's dive into the drama. He thought she was just another clumsy waitress, someone to mock, someone to embarrass. But when the truth comes out, that she's the CEO's daughter, his laughter turns into silence and his arrogance into regret. The afternoon sun spilled through the large glass windows of Maison Elegant, one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. Inside, everything gleamed with perfection. Polished tables, shining silverware, and a staff trained to move with almost choreographed precision. Guests came here not just for the food but for the experience, and the employees knew that every detail mattered. Among the new recruits was Aaliyah, a bright-eyed young black girl barely in her early 20s. She was slim, graceful in her walk, and had a shy yet determined smile. She wasn't used to such an upscale environment. Her family came from humble beginnings, and this job felt like a golden opportunity. She needed the paycheck, but more importantly, she wanted to prove herself. On her very first day, she stood in the corner of the staff room, nervously adjusting her uniform. The black shirt and crisp apron looked neat on her, but inside her chest, her heart raced like a drum. She whispered to herself, "You can do this. Just stay calm, work hard, one step at a time." Unfortunately, not everyone shared her optimism. The restaurant's floor manager, Mr. Crawford, was a man in his late 30s with slicked back hair and a smirk that seemed permanently etched onto his face. He was known among the staff for his arrogance. To him, the restaurant wasn't just about service, it was about control. He enjoyed the power he held over the younger employees, and he had a special disdain for those he felt didn't fit the elite image of the restaurant. The moment his eyes fell on Aaliyah, his brow arched skeptically. He scanned her from head to toe as if evaluating a flawed product. "You're the new hire?" he asked flatly. "Yes, sir," Aaliyah replied politely, her voice soft but steady. Mr. Crawford chuckled under his breath. Well, let's see if you can last a week here. This isn't some coffee shop down the street. We serve high-class clientele. Balance, speed, precision, it all matters. One mistake, and the whole image falls apart." Aaliyah nodded quickly, though his tone pierced her confidence. She tightened her grip on the small serving tray in her hands. As the evening shift began, she watched the others glide across the dining hall, carrying heavy trays with ease, pouring wine smoothly, bowing slightly as they spoke to guests. She tried to imitate their movements, but her nerves made her fingers stiff. Every order, every smile, every tray felt like a test. Her first few rounds went fine. She placed bread baskets neatly, poured water carefully, and even received a kind nod from an elderly couple at one of the corner tables. For a brief moment, relief washed over her. Maybe she could belong here. But Mr. Crawford was watching, and he was waiting. When a large table of 8 guests was seated, Aaliyah was assigned to help. She carefully loaded her tray with glasses of water. The weight was heavier than she expected. Her arms trembled slightly as she stepped out onto the polished floor. One shaky step, then another. She bit her lip, trying to steady her breathing. And then, one glass tilted. Water sloshed dangerously near the edge. Aaliyah quickly corrected her grip, but in doing so, the tray wobbled again. A loud clang echoed as one glass slipped and landed on the carpet. Thankfully, it didn't shatter, but the water splashed onto the floor. Gasps rose from a few customers. Before Aaliyah could bend down to pick it up, Mr. Crawford swooped in like a hawk. His voice rang out across the restaurant, louder than necessary. Well, look, what we have here. The new girl can't even balance a tray." His smirk widened, and he gestured toward the damp spot on the carpet. "Got balance? I'll pay double if you can keep up without making a mess." A few staff members chuckled nervously. Some customers turned their heads. Aaliyah's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear, to shrink so small no one could see her. But instead, she forced herself to stand tall, her eyes lowered but her posture unbroken. I'll clean it up right away," she whispered. Mr. Crawford waved dismissively. "Yes, do that, and next time, try not to embarrass the establishment." As she knelt with a cloth to clean the spill, her hands trembled, not from the tray's weight but from the sting of humiliation. She told herself, "This is just the beginning. I can't give up now. Not for him, not for anyone." And though no one knew it yet, Aaliyah had more strength, more dignity, and more balance than anyone in that room could ever imagine. The night grew busier at Maison Elegant. The sound of clinking glasses, soft jazz playing in the background, and murmurs of well-dressed guests filled the hall. Waiters glided from one table to another, balancing trays stacked with expensive wines and delicate dishes. Every movement felt like a performance, and the customers, the audience, expected perfection. For Aaliyah, the pressure was immense. She wiped her palms against her apron before picking up another tray. This one carried several tall glasses of champagne. The sparkling liquid caught the dim lights, making it appear like golden fire in crystal. One wrong step, one tremor, and it would all come crashing down. She inhaled slowly and lifted the tray, balancing it carefully with both hands. Each step toward the guests felt like a mile. She forced herself to smile, hoping no one could see the way her knees trembled. At first, she managed. The tray wobbled slightly but remained steady. She placed the first 2 glasses on the table with precision. Relief washed over her like a cool breeze. She thought, maybe I'm getting the hang of this. But then, as she reached for the 3rd glass, someone brushed past her, another waiter hurrying to a different table. The tray tilted, and one of the glasses tipped dangerously. Aaliyah gasped, quickly pushing the glass up right before it spilled. Her heart thundered in her chest. The table of wealthy diners chuckled. They whispered to each other, amused at her obvious struggle. One woman covered her smirk with a napkin. And then came the voice she dreaded. "Well, isn't this entertaining, Mr. Crawford's mocking tone carried across the room like a blade. He folded his arms, his lips curling into a sly grin. "Our new recruit thinks balancing is optional. Tell you what, sweetheart, got balance. I'll pay double if you can keep that tray steady for the rest of the night." The laughter from the guests grew louder. Even a few waiters in the background exchanged awkward glances, torn between amusement and pity. Aaliyah's throat tightened. She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but her voice felt locked away. Instead, she nodded quickly and set the remaining glasses down, her hands trembling. The manager clapped his hands sarcastically. "Bravo, you didn't drop them this time. Maybe there's hope after all." His smirk lingered as he walked away, leaving Aaliyah standing frozen by the table, her cheeks burning. The humiliation cut deep. It wasn't just about the glasses. It was about being singled out, mocked in front of strangers, made to feel less than everyone else. When she returned to the staff room for a brief break, she sank into a chair, staring down at her lap. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, each laugh echoing louder in her head. "Why me?" she whispered. But then, she remembered her mother's words before she left for her first day. Dignity isn't about how others treat you. It's about how you carry yourself when they try to bring you down. Aaliyah lifted her chin slowly. Her eyes, once glossy with unshed tears, now held a spark of determination. She wasn't going to let one arrogant manager define her worth. Back on the floor, she moved with more care. Each tray she carried became a silent act of resistance, a quiet statement that she wouldn't be broken so easily. Customers noticed her soft-spoken kindness. One elderly man at a corner table smiled warmly as she refilled his cup. "You're doing fine, young lady," he said gently, his voice filled with encouragement. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Those small words gave her the strength she needed. Still, she could feel Crawford's gaze following her every move, waiting for her next mistake. She knew this was only the beginning of his cruelty. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that Aaliyah carried a secret that would soon change everything. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Aaliyah's small bedroom window. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her worn notebook. Its pages were filled with dreams, sketches, and notes she had been writing since high school. She flipped to a page where she had once scribbled, "Strength is quiet. Dignity is louder than pride." She tucked the notebook into her bag before heading back to work. At the restaurant, the air was tense. Aaliyah could still feel the sting of yesterday's mockery. But she refused to let it define her. Instead, she moved quietly, focusing on her tasks, determined to improve. Crawford, however, was relentless. He assigned her the hardest tables, the heaviest trays, the longest hours. Other staff members noticed but were too afraid to speak up. To them, Crawford was untouchable. But despite his cruelty, Aaliyah never lashed out. She smiled softly at customers, thanked her coworkers when they helped, and carried on with calm persistence. She wasn't perfect. Her hands still shook at times, but she carried herself with quiet strength. During a particularly busy lunch rush, she noticed a little boy struggling with his chair. His parents were deep in conversation, oblivious to his discomfort. Without hesitation, Aaliyah set her tray down and gently helped him. "Thank you," the boy whispered, his face lighting up. "You're welcome," Aaliyah said softly, her smile reaching her eyes. Unbeknownst to her, a regular customer at the far end of the hall watched the entire scene. An elderly woman who visited often for tea and pastries noticed the kindness in Aaliyah's every move. She frowned as she also noticed Crawford's constant belittling. That evening, after a long shift, Aaliyah sat in the break room, writing in her notebook. She scribbled down the words, "No one can steal my balance unless I hand it over." Crawford passed by, smirking as usual. "Still writing in that silly book? Newsflash, kid, you'll never last here. Customers want perfection, not pity." But instead of shrinking under his words, Aaliyah looked up. For the first time, her gaze didn't waver. "Respect is free, Mr. Crawford. Maybe you should try it sometime." He scoffed, caught off guard, and stormed out. But deep down, his pride had been wounded by her quiet defiance. As weeks passed, Crawford's hostility intensified. He made Aaliyah stay late, clean tables others avoided, and redo tasks unnecessarily. He even whispered snide remarks under his breath, clumsy, hopeless, out of place. Yet, each time, Aaliyah held her ground with patience. She began to view his cruelty as fuel, proof that she had the strength to endure. One evening, the restaurant was flooded with a large party of high-profile clients. Crawford barked orders at the staff, making sure everything was perfect. Aaliyah was given the hardest section, carrying multiple trays of appetizers and wine across the floor. As she worked, sweat forming on her brow, she stumbled slightly but quickly recovered. A few customers applauded lightly, impressed by her recovery. Crawford, watching from a distance, narrowed his eyes. Later that night, exhausted, Aaliyah sat again with her notebook. She wrote, "Balance is not holding a tray. Balance is holding your spirit steady when the world shakes it." Her words were her shield. But fate was preparing something larger, something even Crawford could never control. One Friday evening, the restaurant buzzed with unusual energy. Word had spread that a very important guest was coming. The staff polished every glass twice, adjusted every chair, and whispered nervously. "Tonight has to be flawless," Crawford announced, strutting through the staff like a drill sergeant. "One mistake, and you're done." His eyes lingered on Aaliyah, as if the warning were meant only for her. At 7 p.m., the doors opened, and in walked Mr. Donovan Hayes, the CEO of the restaurant chain. Tall, elegant, and commanding, he had an aura that silenced the room. Staff members bowed slightly, their nerves at an all-time high. Crawford nearly tripped over himself trying to impress. "Welcome, sir. We've been expecting you. Everything is prepared to perfection." Mr. Hayes nodded politely, but his gaze drifted across the floor and landed on Aaliyah. His expression softened ever so slightly, though he said nothing. Crawford, oblivious, ordered Aaliyah to serve Hayes's table. "Don't mess this up, or you'll regret it," he hissed. With steady hands, Aaliyah carried the tray to the CEO's table. Her heart raced, not from fear of Crawford, but from the recognition in Hayes's eyes. She set the wine gently before him. For a brief moment, their eyes met. No words were spoken, but something passed between them, something no one else noticed. Mr. Hayes's lips curved into the faintest smile before he returned to his menu. Crawford, meanwhile, hovered close by, desperate to shine. "Sir, you'll find our service here unmatched," he boasted. "Well, except for the occasional weak link." He shot a pointed glance at Aaliyah. Hayes's brows furrowed, but he said nothing, yet. The evening continued. Aaliyah moved gracefully between tables, carrying herself with the calm dignity she had built over the past weeks. Crawford, however, was itching for a chance to humiliate her again, especially in front of the CEO. That chance came when Aaliyah carried a large tray of desserts to Hayes's table. As she approached, Crawford stepped forward loudly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with mock grandeur, "watch closely. Our newest recruit has trouble with balance. If she makes it here without a spill, I'll pay her double tonight." Laughter rippled across the room. Customers turned to watch. Aaliyah froze, her cheeks flaming. Her arms trembled slightly under the weight of the tray. But she closed her eyes briefly, recalling her mother's words, her notebook's pages, and the kindness of strangers who had noticed her effort. She steadied her breathing, then opened her eyes with renewed strength. Step by step, she carried the tray across the floor. Silence fell as everyone watched. When she reached the table, she set it down flawlessly, not a single plate disturbed. Gasps of surprise filled the air. A few customers even clapped. Crawford forced a laugh. "Well, beginner's luck, I suppose." But before he could say more, Mr. Hayes rose from his seat. His deep voice carried across the hall. Is this how you motivate your staff, Mr. Crawford, by mocking them publicly, by wagering their dignity for entertainment? The room went silent. Crawford stammered, I was only joking, sir. Hayes's gaze hardened. Do you think it's a joke to belittle those who work with honor? He turned toward Aaliyah. His tone softened. You've done well, more than well. Confused whispers spread across the restaurant. Crawford blinked rapidly, unsure of what was happening. And then Hayes delivered the revelation. Perhaps you should know, Mr. Crawford, this young lady is not just another employee. She is my daughter. The entire room gasped. Glasses froze midair. Customers whispered in shock. Crawford's face drained of color. He stepped back, stammering. I didn't know, sir. Hayes raised a hand. It shouldn't matter who she is. Every employee deserves respect. But in this case, you've mocked not only a worker, you've mocked my family. Crawford's lips trembled as he tried to recover. Mr. Hayes, please, I had no idea. If I had known, I never would. Hayes cut him off sharply. Exactly. Respect should not depend on knowing who someone's father is. It should be given freely, to every single person who works hard under your management. The staff stood silently, wide-eyed. Some nodded steadily, relieved to see someone finally confronting Crawford. Hayes turned back to Aaliyah, his eyes warm. You didn't tell anyone, did you? Aaliyah shook her head. No, father. I wanted to earn my place honestly. I didn't want to be treated differently. A proud smile spread across Hayes's face. And you did. You've proven not only to me but to everyone here what true balance looks like. Customers began to applaud softly, their admiration for Aaliyah evident. The elderly woman who had watched her kindness earlier stood and clapped warmly, tears in her eyes. Crawford, meanwhile, was sweating. He bowed his head. Sir, please, I beg you. Give me another chance. Hayes regarded him sternly. Perhaps. But first, you must apologize to the one you wronged. Crawford turned to Aaliyah, his arrogance gone. I'm sorry. I treated you unfairly. I mocked you when I should have guided you. Aaliyah looked at him quietly. The room waited for her response. She could have basked in his humiliation, but instead, she said calmly, I forgive you. But I hope you learn, because the next person you belittle might not have the strength to endure it. Her words hit harder than any punishment. Crawford lowered his head in shame. Hayes placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Balance, Aaliyah, is not about trays or glasses. It's about holding your dignity steady, no matter who tries to shake it. The staff cheered softly. Customers clapped louder now, admiring not just the CEO's words but the young girl's resilience. That night, when Aaliyah returned home, she opened her notebook once again. On a fresh page, she wrote, Balance is carrying yourself with grace, even when the world tries to tip you over. Balance is forgiveness when anger is easier. Balance is respect, given and received. She closed the notebook with a smile. For the first time since she started, she felt at peace. And though Crawford would never forget his humiliation, everyone else would never forget Aaliyah's quiet strength. If you felt the heartbeat of this story, give it a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to HB Vibes, where every story carries a lesson for the soul.